Australian zoos will be allowed to import hippopotamuses into the country for the first time in decades after a 40-year ban on the species was lifted. Imports of hippos and their semen were put on hiatus due to a biosecurity disease risk, causing numbers here to dwindle. Yvette Palick from Werribee Zoo joins us now from Victoria. Yvette Palick, welcome. So how do you feel about the lifting of this ban?
This is very exciting. It's been a lot of effort from a lot of people to get it over the line, but I think we had to do it in a safe way, and I think we've got there now.
Yeah, and so you've been lobbying for it, have you? And give us some insight into that campaign and the preparation for the lifting of the ban.
So I work as well as a stud bookkeeper for hippos in the region, and I've been slowly watching those numbers get lower and lower, and unfortunately we have no males left in our region. So we have been working with ZAA and other authorities to get this over the line and make sure that we can do it in a safe way that doesn't risk Australia and our biosecurity.
And what was the biosecurity risk, and was it in relation to them being hoofed animals? And if you can explain that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are classed as hoof stock, which means that they can share similar diseases to livestock and other animals here in Australia. So we just needed to do a bit of a risk analysis into what we have seen in hippos in zoos and conservation organisations and what we've seen in the wild, and just make sure that we do appropriate pre-quarantine and post-quarantine to make sure that they're not carrying any of those diseases when they come over to Australia.
And so what are your plans now?
We would love to initially bring in a couple boys. As I mentioned, we have a female bias, so we have lots of girls here who would love to get their hands on a new male. So possibly bringing in a couple males as our first step, but then we need to look at their genetics as a whole, and that will include also bringing in some females in the near future as well to boost their genetic diversity.
And where do you go to buy a boy hippo?
Yeah, you do have to look pretty hard to find one. Of course, we're not bringing them in from Africa or the wild. These animals are born in zoos. So we do know their genetic background. We know their inbreeding coefficients, so just making sure they're not related to any other hippos, those sorts of things first. Likely Europe will be the first place that will bring in hippos. And hopefully, a couple boys in the next year and a half would be an amazing achievement if we could do that.
And why is this important on top of giving people here in Australia the joy of seeing some hippos close up?
Yeah, like obviously the species are incredible, but they do carry a greater importance. We really need to bring them in to boost our genetics in the region so we can have a sustainable population of hippos. But they're also really important for us to be able to share that wildlife-human conflict that is happening over in Africa. At the end of the day, unless people can connect and fall in love with these animals that we work with, people aren't going to want to take action. So that's the first step to really making a change in the world. And the more that we can share those issues that are happening, like habitat destruction and those sorts of things, the more that we can actually take action in those areas to conserve these species.
And what do you say to people who might argue that hippos should be roaming around in the wild where they usually are and not at zoos?
Yeah, look, I would say absolutely. I would love to not have to have any zoos and our animals have perfect habitat and not be influenced by people, but unfortunately that's not the world we live in. So we do love to have them out there, and that's why we don't take from the wild. What we're doing is to support the conservation actions over in Africa, but at the end of the day their habitat is dwindling. If you look at the logging and the deforestation that's impacting pygmy hippos, where there's less than they reckon 2,000 to 4,000 left in the wild, there's not many left. So unfortunately we do need conservation organisations to raise that awareness so that we can take action to help those animals left in the wild.
And does this have anything to do with the booming popularity of a little hippo in Thailand, which has been a big international hit?
I have been asked, is there any competition raised? I mean, that is absolutely adorable. And if we could have our own little one running around, we haven't had one since 2013, a little common hippo. So we would love to breed, but it's definitely not a competition. Any media for hippos and any media that can help people fall in love with these quirky animals, they are very underrated and they do really have such big personalities and they're so easy to fall in love with. So that they're definitely helping the plight of hippos all around the world.
And so how soon could we see this male hippo roaming around Werribee?
There's still a lot that we need to do with permits, and obviously even just how do you ship a hippo, getting a crate big enough, all those things we still need to work out. But ideally we would love to say by Christmas next year, hopefully we could have a male or two in the country.